You know, when you hear the name Sherlock Holmes, your mind probably jumps straight to those foggy London streets, right? The deerstalker cap, the pipe, and of course, a mind that just sees things nobody else does. But here's the thing, his genius, it wasn't some kind of magic, it was a method. A really specific, rigorous way of thinking. So let's do it. Let's dive right into the mind of the master detective and see if we can unpack the secrets of his method. And this quote right here, this one line he says to his good friend Dr. Watson, it's the key to absolutely everything. Seriously, it's the core idea that puts Holmes on a completely different level from everyone else. The police, Watson, you, me. And it's not just a clever line, you know? It's the bedrock principle of his entire way of solving these impossible mysteries. Okay, so how did he actually do it? I mean, how did he look at the exact same world we all do and see this totally different reality, one just packed with clues and hidden meanings? Well, like I said, it wasn't magic, it was a method, a repeatable process that we can actually break down, understand, and hey, maybe even use a little bit in our own lives. All right, so the first step, and honestly the most important one in the Holmes method, is learning how to truly see the world around you. It all comes down to the data you're collecting. For Holmes, the world was like this constant fire hose of information, and most of us, we just let it wash right over us without even thinking about it.
And that distinction is so important to his whole method. See, seeing is passive, right? You glance at a staircase, you look at someone's hands, but observing, well, that's totally different. That's an active process. It's when you deliberately examine something, you commit it to memory, you gather actual specific facts.
And this is the perfect example of what I'm talking about. There's this one moment where Holmes asks Watson, hey, how many steps are there leading up to our apartment? And Watson has no clue. He's gone up and down those stairs thousands of times, but he never actually observed them. Holmes, on the other hand, he knows there are exactly 17. Why? Because he didn't just see them, he observed them. And that, right there, is the entire difference.
Okay, so once you have your data, once you've actually observed things, what's next? Well, the next step is to logically deduce what it all means. And we're not talking about wild guesses here or some kind of gut feeling. For Holmes, this was a science, and it had to be built on a solid foundation of facts.
And this quote, this is one of his golden rules. It's a huge mistake to come up with a theory before you have the data, because what happens? You start twisting the facts to fit your theory instead of building a theory that fits the facts. You gotta start with the solid, observable evidence first. Everything else, it's just a shot in the dark.
And here's a perfect example of that principle in action. So he gets this anonymous note. Now, he doesn't guess who sent it. Nope. He observes. He feels the thick, stiff paper and spots a specific watermark from Bohemia. Then he looks at the weird sentence structure, this account of you we have from all quarters received, and immediately knows, that's German. See? Every single observation leads directly to a logical deduction.
This is how he builds that incredible chain of logic. He's not just seeing a client, Jabez Wilson, walk through the door. He's observing that the guy's right hand is bigger than his left. Deduction, manual labor. Then he spots a fish tattoo and a Chinese coin on his watch chain. Deduction, the man has been to China. It's amazing, right? He goes from these tiny physical details to a massive piece of this guy's life story.
All right, so we've got the pieces, observation and deduction. Now let's see how he puts them all together to crack a really weird mystery. The case of the Red-Headed League. I mean, this is a total masterclass in finding logic where it seems like there is none.
So here's the central question, and it is a weird one. Why on earth would anyone pay a man a full salary just to sit in an office and copy the encyclopedia? The client, Jabez Wilson, is totally baffled. He thinks he just lucked out. But Holmes, he knows right away that when something is this absurd, there's got to be something serious going on underneath.
And this is so brilliant. Holmes completely ignores the whole crazy story about the Red-Headed League. He knows that's just noise, a distraction. Instead, he focuses only on the facts he can actually observe. Like, why is the assistant willing to work for half wages? That's weird. Why is he obsessed with photography down in the cellar? And what about the dirt on the knees of his pants? And most importantly, where is the pawn shop located? These are the real clues.
And then when you put all those observations together, the whole thing just clicks into place. The ridiculous job was just a trick to get the shop owner, Jabez Wilson, out of the building for hours every day. The half-pay assistant, the dirty knees from kneeling, the time spent in the cellar,
It could only mean one thing. They were digging a tunnel straight into the bank right next door.
So at this point, Holmes' method seems pretty much flawless, right? He's like this perfect thinking machine. But what happens when that machine comes up against a variable it just can't predict? What happens when pure logic runs into human ingenuity and emotion?
You see, for Holmes, emotion was basically a contaminant. It was like grit in a super sensitive instrument, a flaw. He was convinced that to think clearly, you had to be completely free from the messy influence of feelings. Well, that belief was about to get a major, major challenge.
And this famous line from Watson says it all. It introduces the one person who ever really truly outsmarted Sherlock Holmes. The one person who beat his perfect system. Her name was Irene Adler. But to Holmes, for the rest of his life, she would always be the woman. The whole case plays out like this incredible duel of wits. Holmes is hired to get a compromising photo back from her. So he sets this elaborate trap, a fake fire alarm, to trick her into revealing where the photo is hidden. And it works. But then, the turn. She realizes she's been played, and in a truly stunning move, she uses his own methods of disguise and observation against him. She doesn't just outsmart him. She proves that his purely logical system can actually be beaten by a mind that's just as sharp, but maybe a little more flexible.
And this is what he tells the King of Bohemia at the end of it all. It's his final judgment on the matter. And it's not him being rude to the king. It's a sign of his deep, deep respect for Irene Adler. Sure, he might have failed the case, but in the process, he found something maybe more valuable, an equal, the one person who showed him that sometimes pure logic can be outplayed.
So what can we take away from all this? I mean, Holmes's method isn't just for solving crimes in old books, right? It's really a framework for thinking more clearly in our own lives. Let's break down how we can actually apply it. When you boil it all down, the whole thing really comes down to 3 basic steps. Step 1, observe. Actually be present and actively gather facts, not just blurry impressions. Step 2, deduce. Build your theories logically, piece by piece, based only on those facts. And step 3, act. A theory doesn't mean anything until you put it to the test. That's the process. That's how you go from just passively seeing to actively understanding. So really, the tools of Sherlock Holmes, observation, deduction, they're not some secret superpower. They're available to every single one of us. The only real question is, are we going to choose to use them? Because the world is absolutely full of those 17-step staircases if we just decide to stop and count.